get some honey and bring her gold stuff. And then there's Prende. And Prende is the hearth. You can see her, right? She's right here, right? Striking woman, right? Now, the hearth is more domestic. I don't know if that's a statement about her, but domestic life was extremely important as well. She herself is associated with renewal in a couple of different ways, and we're going to talk about it. Now, where she comes from geographically is North Albania. And that's why I wanted to talk about her, because first of all, nobody ever talks about her. You're like, who? And it's important that we start talking about some of the other deities that had significance, right? She is obviously associated not only with renewal through the hearth, she got the flame right there, but she's also love and beauty and fertility and springtime and protection of women and the hearth fire. And her name likely comes from some older Indo-European root word, either connected to fire or brightness, right? Prende. So that's where she comes from. Yeah, exactly who? Like, why are we talking? But now we're going to know about her, right? So her name has had some variations over the years. And, Albanian myth was primarily preserved through oral tradition for years, right? So that's why the alterations kind of vary, like this village telling a story and that village telling a story, but we're able to hold her together. Now, after the Christianization of Albania, she was synchronized with Saint Anne, who is the mother of the Virgin Mary. In some regions, her spring festival has been attached to Saint Anne's feast. And for rural women, she's still seen as fertility rites under the Christian name. So she didn't necessarily lose who she was. She just kind of like, you got to get in where you fit in. Ocean does something very similar, right? And we'll see if this other goddess, this Aztec the goddess, also kind of slips in hidden, right? I'm going to assume that she does. But what she represents is also renewal through adaptation. So let's talk about who she was, okay? Prende appears to be, pre-Christian goddess whose primary worship survived in folk tales long after the paganism faded. These were Indo-European tribes inhabiting the Western Balkans before the Roman conquest. So she functioned herself like a domestic goddess, right? A fertility protector, a guardian of women, and a springtime renewal figure. She had a lot of stuff going on. Her bag is pretty deep. And unlike the Roman system, Albanian paganism did not leave behind, elaborate written myth cycles. So what we have is more ritual survival, which still tells us, one very major thing about her is that she was important enough to endure, right? No matter what she says. And I'm telling you guys, if we look at the chronology of it, she's at the top of the list, right? I'll go through the chronology later, but she might be the oldest one in terms of her worship over all the rest of them, right? That's where she is. Her people were Albanian. These are people of Kosovo. This is parts of Bosnia. This is Western North Macedonia, right? So this is some uncharted territory for me in terms of talking about deities. So I'm glad today that I actually brought her in here and I was kind of able to blend this together. I think it's important. After the Roman conquest, which is 2nd century BCE, and later the Byzantine and Ottoman periods, the older belief systems were, like in a lot of places, they were absorbed, they were suppressed, sometimes they were transformed. She became Christianized early on, and then later she even gets kind of Islamicized, if that's a proper term for it, under the Ottoman rule. But no matter what, whether it's the Catholics, whether it was the Muslims, whatever, she just kept going along. The folk tales about her continued, and she's still primarily in those regions. North Albanian, highland tradition, mountain communities, and domestic rural spaces is where she exists. She is not an imperial goddess. She didn't have a throne. She didn't rule. They didn't see her in that regard. But she was definitely, for the rural people, she was all about survival. So looking at her chronology, right, is that she probably began prior to the 2nd century. She survived through Roman and Byzantine periods in folk religions, and she was later synchronized in approximately the 5th to the 12th centuries. And she continues in this rural Albanian customs into the modern era. So Albanians right now, somebody's probably making an offering to her right now. Just like somebody, look, I'm going to leave here and go get some honey to go give to Ocean later. I think I got some honey in the kitchen. Somebody's probably going to get whatever she likes. Maybe it's a hearth. I don't know what her specifics were, but she's still being honored right now in those regions. North Albania, mountain regions, hearth-centered domestic spaces. So unlike Oshan, whose worship is very institutionally organized, Prende survives through memory and ritual continuity. So she's on a finer line. She's got a finer line than Oshan, which is why I think it's very important to continue to talk about her, right? And then let's talk about her people, because she's surviving. She exists because of the people, and she's surviving also because of the people, right? So she was never like large scale river system or cosmological creation. Her power is far more intimate. She is the hearth renewal. So she governs the sacred fire of the home. And that sounds divine to me, man. Like the home is warm. So this is associated with cooking, heat, family gatherings, and being a spiritual center starting at the home. If the hearth dies, the home collapses. So what she's really protecting is continuity. Now, she also was big on protecting women. She was invoked in protection of women. She was invoked for fertility. So if you weren't having a baby, you call on her. She helps you with that. She helps keep children safe. She has protection for young brides. And she's also associated with beauty and matrimonial harmony. And I can see a lot of that very beautiful, striking depiction of this lady. And in mountain clans, women are the ones who are the carriers of lineage. I didn't know that. That's important. I learned something today, even if I wasn't even trying, right? That's great things about these myth labs. Just sit there and chill out. You're probably going to learn something you didn't know, right? Whether it's going to help you in life, I don't know. But hey, spreading knowledge is a sincerest form of love. So when we look at her as a carrier of lineage, then protecting the women becomes about protecting future generations. And that their civilization renewal, it's small scale. Like she's much smaller scale than Oshan, but equally as important, right? She's like your mom. Yeah, right. Like a mom. Like that's what she looks like. She's cooking. She's keeping the family together. She's protecting. That is what we kind of think of like a mom. 100%, I would agree with that. So she does operate on I'm going to keep individual households together, which is massively important for keeping a community together. So I love that. Now she's also associated with springtime rituals. So the end of the winter hardship, which was obviously very important for these people, she also handles agricultural preparation. You can't say springtime is coming. It means you got to get to work, right? And the renewal of domestic life. So cleaning cycles, things like that. So it's not dramatic, yet it's extremely steady. And it's quiet flame that burns long after the cold. So her core identity is in sometimes the simplest things. That's kind of the amazing thing about the power of this goddess, who I'm telling you, we're talking like 4,000 years that we've been talking about this deity. And she's still here right now, right? That's amazing. I was impressed by the Lakers having 17 championships. She's still going on right now, live and direct. So she's different from Oshan. So if Oshan is renewal through flow, she is renewal through, I would say, stability. That's kind of what she is. She's more cultural preservation, domestic resilience, continuity under occupation, which they both kind of represent, right? And adaptation to synchronization, which we're seeing. This is how some of these older gods and belief systems are surviving, because they're sneaky. They're like, I'm going to get in here. Yeah, I got a different name. I have multiple IDs. I had to do that in my time myself. So she doesn't explode like flowers. That's not who she is, but she is endurance.